Hello, me darlings. Today we looking at the West Country. West Country. I suppose the first question should be what exactly constitutes the West Country. Cornwall and Devon? Sure. Dorset and Somerset? Absolutely. Wiltshire, Gloucestershire? No, it depends on who you ask. So, in other words, the exact border to the West Country is kind of not clearly defined, but that's not a problem. Now, the first thing, at least I noticed when I used to go down that way from around London, is that the whole pace of life is slower. And it takes a kind of a while to get used to it. So what used to really annoy me was I sort of as a student, you know, I had a sort of a crappy car and couldn't afford a proper one. And people down in the West Country with new sports cars were driving slower than me. And it used to get on my tits. It used to annoy the hell out of me. I was like, look, we could swap cars. Why did you buy a sports car to drive it like an old granny? I mean, this is ridiculous. And it used to stress me out a lot. But thankfully, I've gotten used to that now and everything's fine. The other thing you'll probably notice is that the people down that way tend to be a bit, they're not very communicative. They're not there. They don't use many words. So a typical kind of conversation in a pub when someone goes in would be, right? Yeah. You? Yeah. And then they'll go back to staring into their drinks. And this is okay. Nobody is sort of trying to be funny or a bit always offended. It's just they don't really, use many words. While we're on the topic of words they do use, there's quite a few common expressions you'll find for things that they like, things that are positive. So something described as proper job, hell of a gird, or handsome, you know that they like it. A few other words you might come across, a Jana, that is someone from Plymouth, and whether or not it's meant positively or negatively will depend on the tone and the context. Gruckles, that's the generic term, West Country term for holiday maker, and you can be fairly sure the guy with the t-shirt that says, "I'm not a gruckle, I live here," is a holiday maker. Another thing they often say is if they're kind of surprised or especially at someone's behaviour. So if someone says something ridiculous or outlandish or immodest or whatever, the normal reaction you will get is they'll just turn around and say, "Arkady!" If you're like, listen to him, you know. And if people refer to you as me handsome, me darling, or me lover, that means they like you. So be happy about that. Well-known West Country people. Although there are people who are well-known from the West Country, they kind of don't epitomise the West Country mentality. And one notable exception to this is the Cornish comedian Jethro. He's kind of funny. If you're easily offended, perhaps don't go and look at his stuff. But if you despise political correctness and don't mind the odd bad word, probably worth a look. Now, if you think you recognise this Southwest accent from old pirate films, you would be right. And this is most likely down to an actor called Robert Newton, who played a few pirates in the 1950s. Now, he came from Dorset and exaggerated his accent to play the pirates. So if for you a typical pirate is, shiver me timbers, me hearties, that's his fault, yeah? So now you know. Ironically, one of the most instantly recognizable characters in modern film history is played by someone from Southwest, but nobody knows him. Well, this is odd. But the guy I'm talking about is a guy named David Prowse. And he is a fine physical specimen at 6'6" tall, which is nearly 2 meters. And the character he played was Darth Vader, of course, from the Star Wars films. As an aside, the film producers royally shafted him. So throughout the whole of the film production, he wasn't aware of the fact that they wouldn't be using his voice. Now, he has got quite a strong Bristol accent, and a lot of the time they jokingly refer to him as Darth Farmer during the filming. And it was only when they came to the premiere of the film that he realised it wasn't actually his voice that they were hearing. So with the benefit of hindsight, it is of course a much better idea to use James Earl Jones to do the dubbing. If you think of like the iconic scene where, let me just get my Darth on, the old Luke, I am your father. That one, yeah. And if you can imagine what it would have been like if they hadn't have dubbed it with somebody else, it would probably be silly. It'd be, now Luke, I am your father. Now why don't you come over the dark side now? It wouldn't quite be the same, would it? And the thing that he kind of figured, well, that's okay. When they take the mask off, they'll see it's me. And even for that frame, they used another actor. So I actually feel quite sorry for David Prowse. I think he got very, very poorly treated during the filming of Star Wars. My opinion. Most people know that in Scotland there's a Gaelic, in Ireland there's a Gaelic, parts of Wales has a Gaelic background. But what a lot of people don't realise is that Cornwall also has its own version of Gaelic, which is called Kerno. Until about 100 years ago, there were actually people who spoke this as their first language. And this actually goes back to the times of the Roman invasions, and basically the places that have these Gaelic histories is like where the Romans didn't quite get to. Now, some of the things you'll see just defy logic and reasoning, and they can't be explained. You just have to see them and understand it. So, for instance, there's a fairly common naming standard for towns at the mouth of a river. So, for instance, the town at the mouth of the River Fal is Falmouth. The town at the mouth of the River Exe is Exmouth. The town at the mouth of the River Plym is Plymouth. You get the pattern, yeah? But there will always be exceptions. So, for instance, the town at the mouth of the River Tyne looks like it should be pronounced Teignmouth, pronounced Teignmouth. There's a little village in Cornwall on the south coast called Mousehole, which looks like it should be pronounced Mousehole. There's lots of these little examples. If you find something unusual, just accept it, yeah? Don't try and understand it. There's quite an intense rivalry between Devon and Cornwall. So, for instance, they don't agree on how to make pasties, or oggies as they're called. In Cornwall, they think that the pastry should be joined around the edge, whereas in Devon, they think the pastry should be joined in the middle. And both think that their clotted cream is the superior clotted cream. Now, if you think about the fact that there's only 3 ingredients to making a cream tea, it's kind of absurd that they can't even agree on how to do that. So in Cornwall, they say the cream is the most important part. So you've got the scone, the jam, and then the cream on top. Whereas in Devon, they say, well, you know, the cream is so thick, it's difficult to spread properly on the sort of softer, runnier jam. So they put the scone, the cream, and then the jam. But don't worry, they both taste delicious. And a part of your calorie controlled diet, so you can eat them without getting fat. It would be good if it was true, wouldn't it? By all means, try the local scrumpy cider, but don't worry if you don't like it. You can get beers and other spirits and drinks that you're used to. The other culinary delights that you'll find around the southwest are fish and chips, because there's an awful lot of coastline, and the quality and price will vary a lot. So the only thing I can suggest is to ask some of the locals for some recommendations and act accordingly. I think that wraps up our look at the southwest. I'm sure I missed something, so please feel free to comment below on why I omitted certain important things, and I'll give you the best answer I can. Till next time, bye for now.